Hey guys, in this video we're going to take a look at one of the most commonly used data types in Java, strings. Now technically a string isn't a primitive type, it's a class, but because we use it so much it often feels like one, but it isn't. So let's get started. Okay, so I want you to open IntelliJ, create a new project, and a new class inside source. Don't forget to create the main method, and I want you to initialize a variable of type string and assign it between double quotes a value, just your name. So strings are used to store text, things like names, messages, and pretty much anything inside double quotes. You cannot store them between single quotes. It will give you an error. So let's say that I want to store in a variable called your name, you, and let's change this to single quotes. It gives an error. You can store a single character in a string, but it still has to be between double quotes. Okay, so what's important for now is this. When you create a string using double quotes like this, you can actually use a bunch of useful tools called methods to work with it. This is because string is a bit special. It's not a primitive type like int or boolean. But don't worry, we're not going to dive into why just yet. Just know that it has a bunch of methods that we can use. So for example, let's say that we want to figure out the letter at position 2. Before doing that, you should know that in a string, the letters are indexed. So the first letter has position 0, the second has position 1, the third has position 2, 3, 4, 5. So even though Mariam has a length of 6, the first character has position 0 and its last character has position 5, okay? So let's say that I want to print the character at position 1. So we can use the .charAt method. You use it by simply giving it a position. So you can see here that it has an at range int index because it's telling you that this method takes in an int. So in this case, I'll just write 1. And let's run this to see what it prints. As you can see, it prints an A because at position 1, the character is A. There is another useful method, and it's called the dot length. So we use the dot to find the method that we want from string class. So you can think of the string as something called a class, and it has a bunch of methods. So these methods are defined in this class. So in order to access them, we use the dot in order to be able to call the method, okay? So it's kind of like how we did using system.out.println. We're using a method here to print whatever it is that's inside these brackets. The dot length method, it returns the length of this string, so we should expect to see a 6 printed out. So let's run this. So here it is. Okay, so I want to show you guys two more methods. One that's called the substring. And this substring, you can give it just one position or two. If you give it one position, an index, so if we give it the index 2, then it will basically cut out this part of the string and return it to us, okay? So let's give it 2. So what we should be expecting is this part of the string. So let's run this. Here it is. There's another way for calling the substring method. You can give it the begin index and the end index as well. So let's say that I give it 5. You should know that the 5 in this case is exclusive. So in this case, the result will be Ria, R-I and A. The character at position 5 is not to be a part of this substring. So let's run this. Here it is. So these are all useful methods that we can use on the string. and you'll see specifically why when we start solving problems. The last one is the name.contains m. So if we run this, it will give us true because the name does contain m. So the dot contains, it either gives us true or false. If the string that you provide is inside the name, then it will print true. But if it's not present, so if we give it a y instead, for instance, it will print false. And the reason why we have a warning is because it's telling us simplify name.contains to false. It already knows what value is going to be printed, and so there's no really need for this method now. I just wanted to show you. One more thing. So I told you guys that the indices for the characters in the string, they are zero indexed, so the first letter or character has a 0 position, and the last one is at position 5. So this means that if we try to call name.charAt 6 and run this, we get something that's called string index out of bound exception. It's telling us that index 6 out of bounds for length 6. This is a runtime error. And the thing is that index 6 doesn't exist since the last index we have is 5, even though the length of the string is 6. So for any length of a string n, the last character position that you can access is at n-1. So now that we've seen how strings work and how we can store and work with text in Java, you'll start noticing just how often we use them in real-world programs. And as you've probably noticed throughout this section, we've been using variables in every single example without formally stopping to talk about them. In the next video, we'll take a moment to recap what variables are and go over some important naming conventions you'll want to follow as you start writing your own code. See you there!